All right, looks like we got about 20 here right now. We are going to begin very shortly. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and put this up here so that you know that this is about to start. All right. Hey there, students. Just kind of getting everything set up here. We are going to hang out for a bit, and we are going to review the 19th century. Okay, so we're going to start off with some isms. I don't really have a guide for the Industrial Revolution, so I need to get on that certainly. But I will work harder. I will get that out there to y'all at a certain point in time. But at the same time, we need to, concentrate on the stuff that I've got, just really good. I want to make sure these reviews are good. Now, I've done a few of these already. Some of you may have been here before, but if you haven't been, let me show you what we've got for you already, just to make sure that we've got that you know where we've been. All right, so if I look at my uploads here, we've done 3 of these Hangouts so far. Yesterday in the afternoon, we did AP Euro review on the Renaissance and Reformation. And then live Hangout number 2 was last night from about 10:30 to 12:30 at night Eastern, and we did the Age of Absolutism. Now, I did not announce the Hangout that I did this morning on the Scientific Revolution, because that's something that it was Mother's Day, it was before 3 o'clock or so, and I did not want to get in the way. So this is going to be the 4th Hangout that we've done, and this is going to have an emphasis on the 19th century isms, and then some of the stuff that's going on in the late 19th century. And around 9 o'clock, I'm going to be joined by Mr. Moulden, who is an AP Euro teacher in Texas, and he's going to talk to y'all for a bit. I also teach AP US history, so hopefully those of you that are watching videos for this exam will come with me there next year. I'll be doing a lot for that. But I've got some AP US reviews that I'm going to have to get ready for. So about 9 o'clock, Mr. Moulden should be calling in and taking over. So until then, I'm going to be talking. And let me see what we've got here. Let's see. I've got a few guides. This one I just added to the mix. All right, I just added this to the guide, so if you've already downloaded a previous version of the guide, you're going to want to download it again so that you can look at this 19th century isms review, all right, because that's going to be kind of important for this particular segment. Let me make sure I've got this thing focused and as it can get. All right, so you're going to want to download this, and it should be available now on my website. So just keep that in mind, that that's something you're going to want to get a hold of. If it's your first time with us, www.tomrichey.net is my website. You see it up there in the corner. And if you go to tomrichey.net/Euro, then you'll be able to see my European history materials, and this is one of the things available for download. It's got Peter the Great on it. So keep that in mind. So as we go on to do that, we'll figure that out. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Let me see if Miss Noah wants to join us. All right, I'm going to go ahead and send out an invitation to Miss Noah just in case. I'll be checking Twitter here and there just like I have been with the other ones, and then I'll also be checking on the, just the comments that y'all are leaving once in a while. I just need to throw up the command console here. So it's just there are a few things that I'm still kind of working with to kind of get this Google Hangouts thing going. So I'm trying to, you know, reduce the lag time every time. It's going from about 20 minutes to getting about 10 minutes for me to get all started and everything like that. So let's see, the live control room, which allows me to, my stream status is bad. Let's see. Okay, let's hope that changes. Currently it's okay. The Point Princess, all right, is ready. Watching the. Okay, cool. Y'all already put some stuff here. All right, and Luke, yes, I do plan to be back after school tomorrow with another AP Euro review. Let me just go ahead and invite Miss Noah real quick, just in case she would like to join us. Let's see. So I'm going to go ahead and add. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with isms. Now, the Industrial Revolution is something that you're going to need to be familiar with. I would look at a video by Matt Beat. Matt Beat has a channel. It's called Mr. Beat's Social Studies channel. Let's see, let me make sure, yeah, I've got this camera engaged. All right, Mr. Beat's Social Studies channel, if you look that up, it's Beat, like B-E-A-T. Let me go ahead and show you that, because he has got a great little video on the inventions of the Industrial Revolution. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. Let's see, we're doing a little U.S. history earlier. Let's see, so Mr. Beat. Okay, let's see. Mr. Beat's Social Studies channel. All right, and of course I like it when I plug something and y'all subscribe to it, so keep that in mind, that I'd really like to see some more subscriptions. Right now he's got 474 subscriptions. I would love to see that get you know, that number go up from y'all subscribing. So if we look here, Mr. Beat's Social Studies channel, if I look up inventions of the Industrial Revolution, Mr. Beat's video should show up pretty quickly. Mr. Beat's Social Studies channel, Inventions of the Industrial Revolution. And this is his video, which is great. He goes over just a lot of these inventions, such as the...
And you may remember me from Mr. Beat's class. Today we're going to talk about the inventions of the Industrial Revolution. So let's go ahead and take a look, shall we?
In the old days, people did everything by hand. But a few people
I'll go ahead and play it.
In the 1700s realized that was stupid. Machines make work much easier, and even make some people filthy rich. Textiles, or the stuff that you can make clothes out of, single-handedly led to the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. To weave textiles, people began to use looms, but looms still were really hard to use. The first person recognized as improving looms was a British dude named John Kay. In 1733, John Kay invented the flying shuttle. It couldn't actually fly like a bird or UFO, but it did help weavers weave yarn faster. In 1753, John's home was attacked by textile workers who were angry that his inventions might take work away from them. Tisk, tisk. Around 1764, this dude named James Hargreaves invented a spinning jenny, although most historians say someone else did. He just got the credit. What the heck was the spinning jenny? Just know that it allowed a worker to work 8 or more spools of yarn at once, meaning a lot more yarn could be produced in a shorter amount of time. So this wig maker named Richard Arkwright heard about these sweet new inventions, and he decided to create his own, knowing he could potentially become a very wealthy man in the process. Arkwright came up with the spinning frame, later called a water frame, when water power began to be used to drive it. Unlike the spinning jenny, the water frame could only spin one thread at a time. However, the thread was much stronger, thicker, In 1779, Samuel Crompton was like, hey, spinning jenny's cool for quantity, and the water frame is cool for quality. Why not totally combine the two? So he did just that, inventing the spinning mule. Edmund Cartwright envisioned a machine that could weave cloth completely by itself, or at least, very little help. In 1784, he designed first power loom. The power loom was revolutionary in itself and has been modified many times since, and in fact it is still commonly used today. Another important invention of the Industrial Revolution was the cotton gin. The American Eli Whitney invented the machine in 1794 to easily separate cotton fibers from seeds. Scottish inventor James Watt thought about it for a while, and then made great improvements to the steam engine. In 1775, he and Matthew Boulton, some rich guy who built him out, began marketing his version of a steam engine. Now miners could easily remove water from mines and then later make things go on their own. There were thousands of other inventions, of course, during the Industrial Revolution, but those first 7 got things going, and kudos to that.
All right, none of my videos on there. Shame on them. All right, so anyway, that is that is Mr. Beat. I would suggest subscribe to this guy's channel because he's awesome. I'm hoping to see him when I'm in the area for the AP reading. Now, the main point that he makes is that all of these inventions are coming around the early Industrial Revolution, which is based on textile manufacturing, the spinning jenny, the water frame, and other things that are coming out, where we're going from hand power. Now, keep in mind the word manufacturing comes from the Latin word, which is also the Spanish word derived from that, for hand, manos, okay? So manufacturing means to make something with your hands. And one of the biggest things about the Industrial Revolution is that manufacturing no longer means that. When we think manufacturing, we think to make something with a machine. So you're going from hand power to machine power. The things that we used to do by hand the old-fashioned way, we are now doing a new way by machine. So keep that in mind, that that is the biggest thing in the Industrial Revolution. And the reactions to the Industrial Revolution are going to say a lot about the certain isms, okay? So we need to kind of understand, we've got textile manufacturing, we've also got steam power, a lot of the stuff he's talking about in there, but how does that feel, okay? What do you think when you see that? Of course, this is really kind of the end point of the Enlightenment with its emphasis on science and technology and all of that kind of stuff. And do you uncritically accept this, or do you think it's a good thing? And where do you think we should go from here? So the Industrial Revolution really sets the stage for all of these isms of the 19th century. So I'm going to show y'all a graphic organizer that I've got here that, of course, is available on my website, tomrichey.net/Euro. And I'm going to talk about some of these things, and we're going to just look at each of them individually. Now, another thing that I still need to talk about that I might go back and get on another Hangout is the French Revolution. So there are 2 things that are happening. Those 2 things are the French Revolution and the Industrial Revolution that are causing people to think about how we need to go about things. All right, so first of all, let's tackle conservatism. All right, now conservatism, another thing to keep in mind before we do that is anything that you think about these isms, like your American ideas of conservatism and liberalism, are false. All right, just go ahead and throw all that stuff out. There are going to be some commonalities, but especially when it comes to liberalism, European concepts of liberalism are different than American concepts of liberalism. In fact, I was talking to someone from Canada a few weeks ago, and they were saying that in Canada, if someone is liberal, that's someone who's kind of centrist, whereas in the United States, that means somebody who is hard left in their politics and tends to favor government intervention in the economy and that sort of thing, which is a lot different than classical liberalism. Now, I have a video on the Congress of Vienna. Let me go ahead and show you what I've got if you want to go more in depth with this stuff, just to kind of see. Remember, I've got my AP Euro playlist, and that's going to be very important to look at in order to get prepared for this thing. So one video I would recommend is to look at the Congress of Vienna, which set the stage for, like, basically set up Napoleonic Europe. All right, so let's see, review, play AP European History review videos. That's available on my YouTube channel. So what we've got that's relevant to what I'm talking about here, I've got lots of videos on the French Revolution. I've got 4 lectures right now, mini lectures on the French Revolution. I've got a video about John Stuart Mill, and I've got a video about the Congress of Vienna, also explaining the difference between classical liberalism and American liberalism. Got a lot of stuff on Romanticism, and that's important for you to take a look at. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about conservatism. The Congress of Vienna, you need to really watch this video so that you can see. It's about 15 minutes of your time, and you'll be able to understand that. I don't really have a review guide on that right now, so I'm just going to go ahead and refer you to that. So for right now, let's go ahead and take a look at conservatism, and this is a reaction to the French Revolution. All right, so the buzzwords would be things like tradition. Okay, we want to basically maintain the social order. Tradition, institutions. Now, while liberals would favor liberty, which is the beginnings of the French Revolution, liberalism is, really finds its base in the bourgeoisie. Okay, these people who are part of the, industrial manufacturing class and that sort of thing, professionals and those people. Now, conservatism, this is the point of view at the time of the aristocracy. Okay, so they want tradition. They want to preserve institutions. So while liberals, would say, like, we don't want to, have nobility or anything like that. We are against hereditary nobility. We are against established churches and that sort of thing. Then that's something that you've got to that's something you got to keep in mind, that conservatism is a reaction against these liberal principles that were promoted in certain phases of the French Revolution. Now, let me go ahead and kind of get some stuff so I can make this a little bit more organized. I'm going to throw some slides up here. Let's see. Oh, oops, in the wrong place. Looking for something real quick. All right. Let's just give you a brief little primer on classical liberalism. Then I'm going to go and fill this out for you. I just want to make sure that this is as organized as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and share the PowerPoint with you so that you can see that. So we're going to go ahead and introduce you to classical liberalism. All right, now, liberalism. All right, you can kind of fill in your graphic organizer with this. I'm still kind of working on this presentation, but it's made to go with the graphic organizer. Proponents of liberalism are Adam Smith and John Stuart Mill. All right, so these are 2 of your biggest advocates of that. And really, this is a progressive viewpoint. They were against absolutism and aristocracy and all that kind of stuff. And another buzzword for liberalism is laissez-faire. Okay, that these people like a laissez-faire economy, and that's probably the biggest difference between American liberalism and classical European liberalism, is because American liberalism is so social liberalism, like basically that I want civil liberties and civil rights, but it's combined with something that would more appropriately be referred to as progressivism. So that's American ideals of liberalism, whereas in Europe, If somebody says that they are an economic liberal, it means that they favor less government intervention in the economy, that they favor more of a tendency toward laissez-faire and Adam Smith. So when you think economic liberalism in a European context, think Adam Smith. All right, so that is very important for you to know. So let's go back to our presentation here. And one thing to note is that there is no such thing as a liberalist. If I've got to grade one more FRQ where someone says something about a liberalist, don't do that. Please never, ever, ever use the word liberalist. Makes you look silly, or other words that are, you know, a little worse than silly. There's Adam Smith. The only fair is laissez-faire. Now, keep in mind the liberal conception of fairness is to have a society where there are no artificial distinctions put forward by the government. If you look at the old regime, especially in France before the French Revolution, you look at this society that had you know, hereditary nobility, that had privileges, they were tax exempt. Then you've got the church, which had its own privileges. And the liberals are about like, look, get rid of all the privileges and just let people live their own lives with as little government intervention as possible. And that is the liberal viewpoint. Now, at a certain point, you know, there are liberals, branches of liberalism that branch out and kind of forget this whole idea of economic liberalism. But in the 19th century, what we refer to specifically as classical liberalism, that is something that classical liberalism embraces both forms of liberalism, whereas economic and social liberalism. But even in Europe today, if someone says that I'm an economic liberal, they mean that they want very little government intervention in the economy. All right, so we've got that so far: Adam Smith, John Stuart Mill. All right. So let's look at some more of this. So the only fair is laissez-faire. Now, one thing that you want to note is the difference between liberalism and socialism in a European context. And liberalism in the United States is oftentimes like the same person will be called a liberal and a socialist in the United States, whereas in the context of Europe, you're dealing with not, you know, in the context of Europe, you're dealing with liberalism and socialism being different in the context of European history. Whereas liberals emphasize the individual. If there is a conflict between the individual and society, liberals are going to err on the side of the individual. And meanwhile, socialism emphasizes society. Okay, socialism doesn't look at the, you know, doesn't look at people as part of a society or part of a class, but as individuals. All right, so inalienable rights, that is another thing, okay? If we write inalienable or natural rights in our social class, the whole idea, the Declaration of Independence, when you're dealing with life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, I would say that, you know, you could call John Locke a, you know, forebearer of classical liberalism as well, because he is talking about natural rights. So John Locke. And written constitutions, okay, so they like constitutions, and those protect these natural rights. They like natural rights, and, you know, it's the liberal idea, you know, either, you know, sometimes liberal or liberal conservative, which I know that sounds weird in America, but that's something that is a legitimate point of view in Europe. Is that. Now, don't confuse this with democracy, because keep in mind, all democracy is letting people vote and that sort of thing. Somebody can be democratic and not be a liberal, okay? And sometimes we hear about liberal democracy, that sort of thing. But classical liberalism should not be confused with democracy. In fact, liberals a lot of times were afraid of the working class because they felt like the working class was going to, if they were able to vote, the people that don't own property, that they are going to introduce social programs and that sort of thing. They're going to raise taxes on, you know, income and that sort of thing. So they didn't, a lot of liberals didn't really want the working class to vote. So don't confuse liberals with democracy. A lot of liberals were afraid of democracy. All right, so they're fearing the tyranny of the majority, okay? Because liberal, you know, a lot of times we kind of, you know, don't think about liberalism as a philosophy. People say liberals like change. Well, they want certain kinds of change. Everybody likes change if it's their kind of change. But basically, liberals, they feel like, hey, I mean, an absolute ruler and a bunch of unlettered workers, either one is more likely to bring about a tyranny. John Stuart Mill writes about this tyranny of the majority that we have to be careful about. All right. So liberalism, we got the bourgeoisie, the urban middle class. Buzzwords: liberty, laissez-faire, reform, constitution, individualism, and choice. Okay, those are good. Choice. And also equality. Okay, now it's a certain type of equality. Keep in mind, equality is one of those buzzwords. You know, you got to be very careful about that, because when we say equality, it's like, what kind of equality do you mean? Do we mean the sort of equality of outcome where we make everyone the same, or do we mean equality of opportunity? And liberals are about equality of opportunity. Take away the privileges, and then everybody has equal opportunity, and that is the most fair way to a liberal. Now, socialists are going to feel a little bit differently about that. And Adam Smith, John Stuart Mill, there's another guy, Frederick Bastiat. But first of all, liberalism mixes well with nationalism, which we'll talk about in a bit if we're thinking about food or drink pairings. If we're pairing these, you know, a liberal and a nationalist could play well together. Because nationalism is about self-determination of peoples and not being in some kind of big empire. So liberals and nationalists were often on the same page. Now, the others, conservatism, socialism, and romanticism, not so much. Okay, so especially not socialism. Now, sometimes conservatives and liberals could play together if it were against socialists. Okay, that can happen, which you know, that happened to some extent, you know, in Germany, where Bismarck, you know, got liberals to cooperate with him because he was suppressing the Social Democratic Party. Now, at the same time, Bismarck did a lot of things that the liberals didn't like either. All right, so as far as documents, influential documents, the most influential document of liberalism is, you know, these are Wealth of Nations or John Stuart Mill's On Liberty, and also Frederick Bastiat's work, who was a French liberal that you're unlikely to encounter on the exam, The Law. But you're more than likely you're going to get Wealth of Nations or John Stuart Mill's On Liberty. Okay, so John Stuart Mill's On Liberty is still very, very, you know, very, very relevant today, and a lot of people still read it. Now, John Stuart Mill put forward two maxims of liberalism. Okay, so he said, first of all, you know, the maxims are first, that the individual is not accountable to society for his actions insofar as these concern the interests of no person but himself. And I've got a video on John Stuart Mill. I'd encourage you to watch it. So I'm not responsible. If it just concerns me, then it's my business, all right? Liberals are individualists. That's what separates a liberal from a conservative or a socialist or a nationalist, is that liberals first see individuals, whereas these others see people as part of a group. Secondly, that such actions are for such actions as are prejudicial to the interest of others, the individual is accountable and may be subjected to social or to legal punishment. This is pretty important because a liberal sees a role for government, but the role of government is not to create justice, but to prevent injustice. And that is very important to note, that later on, you know, progressives and, you know, people like, you know, modern liberals in America, they'll see government as a tool to get rid of injustice, whereas the classical liberals, or to create justice, rather. The classical liberals would say it is just about getting rid of an injustice and making sure that that level playing field is there. All right, and then there is, of course, conservative opposition, which, you know, is most symbolized by Clemens von Metternich, okay, who is the big player at the Congress of Vienna. So Metternich looks back at 1789 to 1815 toward the French Revolution, and he thinks that this is that this was bad, that liberalism brought all this craziness about. And he's also in Austria, which is self-determination be very dangerous to these people. Okay, so you've got Metternich, who is standing in opposition to liberalism. All right, so you've got basically conservatives are on the other side, and these people are all about them some tradition. All right, so they want tradition, they want institutions, and that sort of thing. So conservatives, you would think of Edmund Burke, because Edmund Burke was someone who wrote against the French Revolution, and then you've got Clemens von Metternich. Now, conservatism doesn't really play well with most of these. Sometimes conservatives could play well with romantics because, as we'll talk about, both of those are backward-looking movements, whereas conservatism doesn't tend to play well with liberalism, socialism, or nationalism, because all of these things threaten the social order. All right, so let's see if I've got some more unfinished slides here that might be good on that. So if we go to 19th century isms. All right, let's take a look here. Okay, so I've got something a little more structured on conservatism and a little bit prettier than what you're dealing with there. Let's see. So here is conservatives. Okay, or here are conservatives. Is our children learning? All right, so the social classes, you're dealing with the aristocracy, also the landed gentry. Okay, now it's very important that you understand, especially in Britain, you've got a class of landowners, and these people are not hereditary nobles, but they own land, and so they share a lot of interest with the traditional nobility, and they're going to dominate British politics for quite a while. All right, so traditions, institutions, and also privileges. And they believe that the only reason that we have any sort of social stability or social fabric is because of these privileged groups are jealous of their respective privileges. Mixes well sometimes with the Romantics, and doesn't mix well with liberalism, socialism, or nationalism. Your proponents, as I said, Edmund Burke and Metternich, and one of the biggest, defenses of conservatism is Burke's reflections on the revolution in France. Okay, so Burke is writing about the French Revolution, and he's saying that, like, this thing is going to get really ugly really fast because these people are not respecting traditions. Okay, these people are trying to dismantle something very, very quickly, and they're not going to be able to do that. Like, Burke thought that the American colonies, like, Burke supported the American Revolution because the Americans had previous experience with liberty and free government, whereas he did not support the French Revolution because they were trying to go really quickly from an absolute monarchy to a constitutional monarchy just overnight, and it really spun out of control. So while Edmund Burke has sympathies with liberal values, sometimes he's referred to as a liberal conservative, as I was saying earlier, but Burke really is more conservative in the sense of the AP Euro exam and what they're going to be looking for there. All right. Now, this Industrial Revolution is, is coming around, and the Industrial Revolution, how you're going to respond to that is a big indicator of, where you fit in. So the liberals, these are the banner carriers of the Enlightenment. All right. There is a liberal writer, Frederick Bastiat, who's probably not going to be on the exam, but I really like his work to explain liberalism. One time he's writing about this idea of perfectibility, which the liberals and the philosophers of the Enlightenment thought that through science and technology that we will continue to perfect humanity. So when the Industrial Revolution happens, you've got, on one hand, our clothes are cheaper. our clothes, we've got more clothes, we've got multiple pair of underwear and all that kind of stuff for the first time. But on the other hand, the Industrial Revolution is really ugly, and it's ruining a lot of lives. And there are a lot of social adjustments that are being made. And, you know, it's like when you look at that, if you're a liberal, you're concerned about the bottom line, the big picture, you're concerned about progress. That is another liberal word, that, you know, we are making progress. And that is through the, you know, development of science and technology, like you see during the Enlightenment. Okay, so, you know, they think the Industrial Revolution, while it may have its faults, it is leading us somewhere great. Keep in mind, before the Industrial Revolution, we're not having this Google Hangout. You know, we're not having really anything. Like, we're, you know, got maybe 1 or 2 sets of clothes or something, and are going to spend all day working in the fields or something like that. But then again, a romantic. Now, I've got 2 videos on Romanticism, one about Romanticism as a philosophy, and another one about Romantic art. So I'm going to kind of gloss over Romanticism, and you know, we'll just kind of take a look at that. But really, it is a critique of progress, all right? Because while the liberals are like, this Industrial Revolution is progress, for romantics, they don't really see that. One of the questions that I've seen come up in FRQs a lot is comparing and contrasting Romanticism with the Enlightenment, because Romanticism is first and foremost a reaction against the Enlightenment. And they're thinking like, okay, the liberals are concerned about what we have gained, but the romantics are concerned about what it is that we've lost. That in the, you know, there's an opportunity cost, is what they say in economics. So, you know, when you think about that, let's go ahead and take a look at the graphic organizer again. And we're going to take a look at Romanticism. Now, Romanticism is not so much about class, but in a lot of cases, I mean, it could involve the aristocracy or something like that, but it's not as class motivated. Now, one of the biggest things that you need to think about, the Romantics, they like nature, they like religion, they like the Middle Ages. Basically anything that the Enlightenment stands for, they, you know, stands against, they stand for. They believe, like, look, the Middle Ages were cool. This age of chivalry, we can write books about it and that sort of thing. So nature, religion, the Middle Ages, just anything that is beautiful. They like childhood. Okay, they like romantic love. Anything that is beautiful, that makes us warm and flowery, romantics like that sort of thing. Now, Romanticism can sometimes mix well with conservatism. Also, mixes very well with nationalism. All right. So when you think about, you know, romantic art has some, you know, nationalist undertones. Because if you think about it, you know, if we look at the Greeks in the early 19th century, or, you know, anyone else who's fighting for their freedom, isn't that beautiful that they're fighting for their freedom? If you take a look at, you know, Eugene Delacroix's Liberty Leading the People. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at that painting, because that combines romantic and nationalist themes. So we'll go ahead and look at that. So keep in mind, Delacroix is a romantic artist, but he's also bringing in this nationalism. You see that France, symbolized by a very attractive topless woman in her Republican cap, is leading, and we see here she symbolizes liberty, and there is the French flag, the French tricolor, and you see Abraham Lincoln there behind her. I analyzed this in more detail later, but you see Abraham Lincoln and his little buddy here with a sword. We see a little kid, looks like he's having a lot of fun with guns, you know. I mean, rationally, we're like, kids, don't play with guns, but you know, that can be kind of fun. So it really romanticizes this whole idea of a revolution and of armed revolt. And of course, World War I is going to put this kind of mentality to rest once and for all. This whole idea of romanticizing war and fighting is something beautiful. So it mixes well with nationalism, and conservatism does not mix well with liberalism. Okay, doesn't play well with liberalism. And socialism isn't really necessarily relevant to Romanticism so much, but basically Romantics and socialists, are both very anti-liberalism. Actually, socialism's kind of like the kid that nobody wants to play with, because really liberals and socialists disagree on terms of the individual versus society. Nationalists and socialists, because of the idea of social class being what they're concerned with. So socialists are concerned with, let's see, this is the working class, and combined with some intellectuals like Karl Marx. Okay, so Karl Marx, who the writer of the Communist Manifesto, is not a member of the working class. He's about as bourgeois as you get, but he's an intellectual who is a socialist. So this is where we talk about social class. Marx writes about the proletariat. So this is about a workers' revolution. Keep in mind that communism, Marxism is an extreme form of socialism, but basically they have a different idea of equality than the liberals have. The way that I explain this is that the conservatives are really, this is the old regime. The conservatives want to protect as much of the old regime as possible. And these are the conservatives. Now, liberalism and socialism give us two ways of dealing with that. Okay, so basically, you've got in the old conservative order a rigid social class system. Okay, and so you've got liberalism and socialism that both propose to replace this with something. Now, liberalism wants to, replace that with a system of laissez-faire, of equality, of opportunity, whereas socialism is much more concerned about equality of outcome. Okay, so we make everyone the same, and this is where you've got basically, lots of privileged groups. And both liberalism and socialism agree that they want to get rid of privilege. P-R-I-V. All right. Tell you what, it's hard to spell like with an actual pen when you're used to spell check. All right, so they want to get rid of the system of privileges. So the thing is equality of opportunity, and basically have a fluid class system. Fluid mobile class system, and this would be to get rid of class entirely. All right, so get rid of it and to basically put everybody in one box. And I hope that makes sense to some of you folks. That's just a way that I've explained in the past that liberals and socialists both have a different vision of how to move forward. Okay, so socialism doesn't really mix well with with anybody really, because they hate conservatives, and then nationalism is against that. Now, sometimes socialists and romantics, they're both kind of irrational and wacky at times, but I wouldn't necessarily say that socialism mixes well with anybody. Now, one thing to note would be nationalism. Okay, now social class, no, there is not. This is the whole idea of social class is out, because we should not see ourselves as members of a social class, but no matter what social class you're part of, you should see yourself as part of a nation. Not as this class or that class, because that divides a nation. When we start thinking about, it's like basically a socialist would say, as an American work teacher, I have more in common with a German teacher or a Canadian teacher or a Chinese teacher than I do with an American businessman or American worker or an American politician, whereas a nationalist would say that I have more in common with the American, you know, manufacturer, the American politician or business owner because I am an American. And I think that Americans tend to have a pretty nationalist ethic about us. You know, when you go to another country, you feel like, whoa, this is not home. So nationalism, it's like, okay, no matter what it is you do, no matter what social class you're a part of, you are part of this nation. Now, keep in mind that that is another thing when you think about the old regime, that nobles saw themselves as kind of like, you know, we're kind of a community of nobles no matter what country we're in. You had all these states within states. So nationalism is about getting rid of, you know, minimalizing the impact of these different social distinctions and replace. So, you know, nationalism is kind of another way to look at this, whereas individuals look at reorganizing, or the liberals look at reorganizing society in terms of the individual, and socialism thinks about it in terms of social class, of just putting everybody in one box together. Nationalists are thinking about this as a nation. Okay, so we should think about you know, reorganizing ourselves in terms of nations. Now I'm looking for nationalism. Okay, this one's a little bit dated, but social classes, this can be any. And let's see. Let me go ahead and pull up the sheet again. All right, so it could be any social class, and what you're looking at here is self-determination. Sorry, that's hard to write. Let me write it again. Self-determination and culture. Okay, basically that people who share a common culture should share a common government. Okay, so basically culture equals nation. Now, when it comes to the elements of culture, we're dealing with largely two things that are dominant. First of all, language and religion. And these are the two elements of culture that, you know, if you share the same language with somebody and the same religion, there are two things that really bind you together. So these are the values of nationalists. Now, nationalists get along well with romantics. Because, you know, it's like, hey, want to have your own nation with people that talk like you and pray like you and all that kind of stuff? That's beautiful, man. You know, that's how the nationalists, or how the romantics would look at it. And liberals would support that, because liberals didn't like these big absolutist empires. They believe that people should be able to determine their own government. And so nationalism would not play well with conservatism, because conservatives favor the old regime of nations within nations, whereas nationalists say we've got to, you know, we got to go beyond that. And then you've got, let's see, socialist, because that, you know, because that's going to get in the way of this classless society. Now, keep in mind that we're talking about things in the early 19th century. Hitler and Mussolini are going to figure out how to kind of combine, like fascism sort of combines elements of socialism with elements of nationalism, what some scholars refer to as right-wing socialism, where we combine socialism and nationalism together. But in terms of the early 19th century, these two don't get along all that well. All right, so that's really kind of an introduction to the isms. Let me see if I can, if any questions are coming in. I'm going to check Twitter. If you want to take a break real quick, that's cool. But yeah, let me see what's going on Twitter and what's going on the comments and all of that kind of stuff. All right, so let's see. Twitter, what's going on here? Twitter @TomRichey. If you're not already following me, you should be. That way you get all the announcement and all the stuff. Okay, that's great. Kindle Cake, thank you very much for all of that kind of stuff. Why can't I do AP Human Geography? Because I don't want to. Yeah, that's I do. I do AP Euro and AP US History, and some years I do AP Government. So next year I'm actually going to be teaching AP Euro, AP US History, and AP US Government. So I'll be doing some things for all of that stuff. And whoa, let's see. Wow. Chaitana, I'm very, very flattered. Even though, you might want to rethink your religious choices. I can't work miracles. Now I can help you out here, but we'll see. All right, some motivation to go study. Megan, I hope you're watching. You need motivation. You get college credit. Now, if anybody needs motivation, I tell my students to look at that guy there, the guy from Animal House. It's like that guy had a really good time in college. Now, y'all don't want to have a good time in the same sense that he did, but the thing is, it's like, when you get into college, do you want to be the person that's like, oh, man, I had to sign up for Western Civ 2 at 8 o'clock in the morning, or do you want to be that person that's like, hey, I'm sleeping in. I'm taking like 12 hours this semester because I passed so many AP exams. I don't have to take Western Civ 2 because I passed AP Euro. Okay, so that's motivation, really, when you think about the college credit. You really can't beat it. You've already put forth all this effort, so go ahead and go for broke, get that college credit, and make your college experience a little bit easier. That's a good thing. And let's see, let's see, Andrea, I've been told that before here and there. So yeah. All right, and that's that. And we've got Twitter. Let's go ahead and take a look at the comments that are coming in and see if we've got any questions from people via that. All right, so Romanticism and nationalism, Nalani, and I appreciate it. Nalani's here just about every time, which is awesome. Now, Romanticism, there's this guy, Goethe, however you say his name, but he wrote this book called The Sorrows of Young Werther, which was kind of a romantic novel about this guy that is writing letters, and he's like obsessed with this woman who's married, and he can't live without her, and so since he can't have her, he basically shoots himself at the end of it. But the thing is, the documents I think are going to be more important for other stuff. Yeah, I would, let's see, documents and not just communists on Socialism, a Communist Manifesto. Let's see, some more about these significant revolutions. Christina, I'm, basically the revolutions of 1848, that's going to be something that I could either give a full treatment or I can just give a very superficial treatment that is going to just give you what you need for the exam. So let me go with the latter, because to give a full treatment is going to take a while. So the revolution of 1848, you need to understand that, and this is part of my lecture on the Congress of Vienna. The Congress of Vienna sets up a conservative order. So conservatism in a lot of places is still ascendant in the early 19th century. And conservatives tend to repress liberal and socialist opposition and nationalist opposition. So liberals, socialists, nationalists, they're all trying to bring about their own view of how they want things, and conservatives are about repressing it. And so by 1848, now 1815 to 1848 is called the Age of Metternich, as I say in my video on that. But the Age of Metternich falls apart in 1848, and you've got these revolutions all across Europe. You've got France, Germany, Austria. They've all got these revolutionary movements led by a lot of times liberals, and also, occasionally you might find the occasional socialist in there, and they're wanting reforms. They are tired of being repressed. And what happens, though, is in a lot of cases, these revolutions are crushed. Okay, Metternich flees, goes to England. Not sure if he stays there. I know that in Germany, those revolutions are crushed, but it causes a problem, and, people want liberalism. They want this. Now, Britain, on the other hand, Britain does not experience a revolution in 1848. And the reason why this is because the British are open to at least modest reform. Now, let me show you something I've shown y'all before, that I've got a bunch of PowerPoint presentations on my website. If you just search for history PowerPoints on Google, you're going to run into, you know, that's going to be about the 5th one, so history PowerPoints. And you'll see a lot of these. There are things that I'm going to lecture out pretty soon. I've already made slideshows for them, so eventually I'll follow that up with a lecture. A lot of these, especially the early ones, I don't, but I'm going to, you know, I'll have a lecture on mercantilism for people taking this class next year. It won't help y'all. But German unification and also reform in Britain. I've got a PowerPoint on that, and a lot of this stuff has been featured on, you know, SlideShare, which is a website for people to share their PowerPoint presentations. I bet y'all didn't know about that, but yeah, SlideShare, which is blocked by the school right now. I've got to go ahead and renew my permissions for YouTube and all of that stuff. Let's see, every hour and a half this stuff expires, and there are certain sites that I can't access. So SlideShare is just a forum for that, and I've got like several things. You may not find that I've had a video on that, but you know, reform in Britain, I talk about Parliament, the House of Lords, the House of Commons, the property requirements, rotten boroughs, and talk about some of the modest reforms in Britain. And so following that might give you at least a little bit of a basis, even though it's going to make a lot more sense when I lecture, because I don't put a lot of things in here. But you can look at the 6 points of Chartism and these ideas and that sort of thing. So that's just something to kind of think about. Those are the 6 demands of the Chartist. All right, so that's something that you can take a look at. Let's see if we've got, but basically keep in mind that Britain did not experience a revolution in 1848 because they had passed some modest reforms. Now, they didn't give the Chartists everything they wanted, but at least they did some things to kind of help out. Now, let's go ahead and see what other questions we got. Reppin' Oregon. Matt is reppin' Oregon. Quack, quack. Let's see. Life improved. Let's see. Verse and get. Whoa. All right. So the inter-year wars, I don't even know what you're talking about. Which, oh, wait, maybe the interwar years or something like that. That's going to be later in another review. Let's see, 1848. Is anyone from Miss Boyd's class here? I guess at least one person. All right, got some people from California, North Dakota. All right, so I've got like half of North Dakota watching right now. So let's see, yeah. So liberalism, yeah. So we've got A5IN, liberal. I was about to say liberalist. Don't say liberalist. Okay, there's no such thing. Liberalism versus nationalism, and let's see. So. All right, let's see. All right, Josh, thank you for watching the ads. Okay, if you ever like, hey, you know, where's my tea? It's too late for tea. I need to go to bed at some point. I'm glad y'all are thinking about me. There will be tea at other things, just not necessarily at these, you know, at these live hangouts. But yeah, appreciate y'all's attention to detail. All right, yes, okay, so Bismarck, we can talk about some realpolitik in a little bit, possibly. So we got somebody New York repping. Okay, so let's go ahead and start talking. Overall, Bismarck was a sly dog. Christina, I couldn't have said it any better myself. All right, so yes, and somebody's right here that basically Bismarck was a political conservative, but then again, Bismarck, who as Matt says was a stud. All right, that's another, yeah, I would say that's pretty accurate. Now, and some of this stuff, yeah, okay, so some of which we're getting ahead of ourselves, but Bismarck was a conservative at heart, but he introduces the idea of realpolitik, which is basically like, look, doesn't matter if I'm a conservative, if I need to borrow from liberalism or socialism or nationalism in order to make Prussia stronger and achieve this goal of German unification under Prussian dominance, I'll do that, okay? So Bismarck is like, I'm not ideological, whereas in the early 19th century, keep in mind what you're looking at here is pretty unique to the early 19th century because, you know, this sort of falls apart, this sort of rigid idealism is not going to be as prevalent later on once Bismarck is like, hey, look, I'm not going to govern based on philosophy, I'm going to govern based on power. And so, you know, and you see liberals appropriate elements of socialism. Like I said, that a lot of liberals give up on the economic liberalism and kind of go more toward a social liberalism, excuse me, hiccups, that also has, you know, like basically a role for government in the economy. All right, we got up to 72 viewers. This is pretty awesome. I'm about to go ahead and get back to, you know, get our content on and all of that kind of stuff. Let's see. All right. Let's see. Mr. Moulden will be coming here in about another hour. All right, so here we go. Let's see. All right, so I've got a few more things that I want to talk about. Let's see what we've got left here. I've got German unification. Then I've got imperialism and all of that kind of stuff. So I want to go over a couple late 19th century topics. All right, so we've gone over the isms. Let's think about some of these late 19th century topics. Let me go ahead and talk about the new imperialism. All right, now first of all, you need to understand, and this is available on my website as well, so keep that in mind, that that is something that is available to you, tomrichey.net/Euro. All of these guides are available, so anything that I'm putting in front of you here is available on my website, so that you can, you can fill this out along with me. So the old imperialism is 1450 to 1750, and mainly in the Americas, and the, some extent the Pacific Islands. And that is like Columbus, Vasco da Gama. I've got a, I've got a video lecture on the age of exploration. So understand that that is, when we talk about the new imperialism, we are differentiating it from the old imperialism that happened then. Okay, so the new imperialism is happening in the late 19th century. Okay, so the period of the new imperialism is really about 1870-ish to 1914. Keep in mind that World War I kind of ends this whole era of imperialism, and this is based more in Africa and Asia. All right, so Africa and Asia are really your grounds for imperialism here. And a big part of this imperialism is the scramble for Africa, which begins in 1870 and 1915, or 1913. Now, Africa was referred to as the dark continent, which is basically because they knew very little about it, all right, that there were some things here where they had some trading posts here and there, but the interior of the continent was a big mystery, okay? What is in here? This is a dark continent. It is calling out for us to intervene. What is important for imperialism here is that there is a technology gap, all right, which is at that time more pronounced than ever before, than it would ever be again. I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit because this isn't going to go back and forth as much as the others, okay? So this technology gap is very, very critical for the success of imperialism, because really it's kind of human nature. Anytime there is a group of people that is more powerful than another group of people, they are going to take over those people, whether it's cavemen or something like that, one band of cavemen versus another, or one nation versus another. So you have this scramble for Africa. Now, in 1870, European powers govern 10% of Africa. That goes to 90%, all right? And there are only two African countries that remained independent. Those would be Liberia and Ethiopia. All right, so so a couple reasons for that. So Liberia and, let's see, Liberia and Ethiopia. And what happened here is Liberia was a colony of freed people of color from the United States. And what's important there is the United States kind of had them under their wing. And so, the Europeans didn't mess with them. And then you've got Ethiopia. Well, they won a war against Italy. The Italians tried to take over it and didn't get there. Now, it's going to be very important to be able to visually see what is here, okay? I've seen test questions before where they give you a map of Africa and basically ask you whose empire is that, all right? And on the electronic electronic version of this review guide, I've got a link to a map on Wikipedia that Eric Gaba has so nicely shared with us, and says that I can use it as long as I give him credit. I can even make money off of it if I want to, as long as he gets the credit, so that's cool. All right, so what we've got here, first of all, is, you know, if we're looking for France, France is here, okay? France is largely in the northwest portion of Africa. Another easy one is Belgium. Belgium is here in the Congo. That's just in the middle of Africa. Now, the Belgians, you know, this was Belgium. There is a pretty funny little video that I like to show in class, where this guy Nigel Farage from the UK Independence Party. By the way, like, once my class is done with the exam, not that we're gonna have like a lot of homework or anything like that, we're gonna spend some class time following the European Parliament elections, because you know, that's a pretty big deal. And this guy that's a member of the UK Independence Party, which polls pretty big in European Parliament elections in the UK, he was going after this guy who's the president of the European Union, and he was saying, well, you know, you don't respect nation states because you're from Belgium, which is essentially a non-country. Now, I don't endorse that. If any of you are Belgian or Belgian descended, sorry about that. But Belgium has never been a very powerful country. So the thing is, here is King Leopold, who is a constitutional monarch of a country that's really not all that important. And what we have here is that Leopold of Belgium got to control the colony directly, okay? So here's a way where he can be very powerful. He's like, look at me, I'm, you know, the head honcho here. And this is where you have the most atrocities. Because you have people like, basically, you've got rubber quotas, and the natives, if they did not meet their rubber quota, they would have like their hands cut off by these Belgian overlords. So if they didn't meet their rubber quota, then they cut off their hands. But there were lots of abuses here. Now, the British Empire was the biggest. Okay, so the British, you're really looking at one point you could go all the way from Egypt to South Africa. And that would be the British Empire, okay? So the British Empire kind of just snakes through from Egypt to South Africa. So we've got the British, we've got France, we've got Belgium. Italy is here, and they are here. Now, keep in mind, Italy is not here, because that's Ethiopia. So Italy is in Libya, Italy is in Somalia, and didn't have a whole lot of success there. Now, then you've got Portugal and Germany. And Portugal and Germany are both kind of weird, because what they do here, and I'm hoping I don't have it wrong on this map, but pretty sure here Portugal is here, and then Germany is here and here and here. All right, so that's that. So Germany is like 3 of them, and Portugal's 2 of them. And those are the imperial powers that you kind of need to be familiar with and know where they were in Africa, so be able to identify that on a map. So you see here that you don't have to identify necessarily specific things as much as see just general ideas. There's France, Italy's there and there, Britain goes through here, Belgium's right in the middle, Germany has 3 things here, and then Portugal has 2. But Germany and Portugal are pretty confusing because they both, neither one of them are contiguous. All right, now Sir Cecil Rhodes of Britain was a diamond magnate, and he was the head of the De Beers Corporation. And he was a big adventurer, liked to go around with his band of brothers, enjoyed all forms of male companionship. And so Sir Cecil Rhodes also is the man responsible for the Rhodes Scholarship. And he was a really avid British nationalist. I mean, this guy, you know, he was, you know, he would say stuff like, he wrote in this pamphlet that he was going to, his goal was to reunite like the entire English-speaking world under English domination. Like, he wanted to get America back. He said, hey, if we try hard enough, we can get America back. He wanted to create a secret society for the promotion of British interests in the British Empire. He said, hey, if the Masons can get together for nothing, for no cause, and the Jesuits can get together for a bad cause, keep in mind, as you know, British person in the 19th century was kind of anti-Catholic. He says, if they can do this, why don't we start a secret society for a good cause? So the Rhodes Scholarship, this is something where anybody like in English-speaking areas, like America, gets a certain amount of Rhodes Scholarships, and they go to, a winner of a Rhodes Scholarship goes to Cecil Rhodes' alma mater of Oxford and goes to study, and then they come back to their countries and they're like, hey, Britain, yeah, all right, and that's that's the idea. Now, President Bill Clinton was a Rhodes Scholar. When he was dodging the draft, he was doing his Rhodes Scholarship stuff up in Oxford. And he comes back, and keep in mind, I mean, here's a president of the United States that got a Rhodes Scholarship, that spent a few years in England. And so while the United States is not, part of the British Empire today, we still have what's ever since been World War II been termed as the special relationship. We have this close alliance with the British, and keep in mind, this all plays into nationalism because we're dealing with language. The German unification effort and the Italian unification effort are about uniting people who speak a common language. So while we're not politically united with Britain, we tend to be closer to them, like the British, in a lot of cases, have closer ties with us than they have with Europe. A lot of people in Britain today, we call that Euroscepticism, and that's in my kind of summation video of the late 20th century, basically the post-World War II stuff. I've got a video on that where I ramble on for 20 minutes about anything that I've seen on the exam since World War II. So we're on imperialism right now, so let's go ahead and take a look back at our guide and talk about the reasons for the European imperialism, for this new imperialism. Now, first of all, expansion of markets for goods. With the Industrial Revolution, people were making more than they could consume, and so how do we get our products out there? And so when you take over these countries, you can regulate trade there. It's almost like a new mercantilism sort of thing, that if you can take over this place, then you send your goods there. You've got people who will consume your goods. Now, on the other hand, it also created a market for exotic goods from some of these other countries. So that's something that needs to be understood, that basically increasing trade and providing markets for the goods from the mother country. Really, that was the same as the old colonialism. Natural resources. I mentioned the rubber quota in the Belgian Congo, and then Sir Cecil Rhodes is finding all kinds of diamonds in Africa. So these natural resources are very important here. Now, military bases, especially naval bases. This is the age of sea power. Now, I have got a lecture, just a mini lecture, where I'm doing AP Euro Q&A. That is the other resource that I've got that's available to you. Some of these AP Euro Q&A videos in which I tackle certain topics. I've got 7 of them so far where I've answered questions from students. And so this is my AP European History review playlist. The other one, and keep in mind, I've got almost 3,000 subscribers, hoping to get there. So if you've got any friends that are taking Euro, tell them about my channel. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at our playlist. And the AP Euro Q&A videos, I've got, how important is art? Naval power is the second one. Naval power in European history, and I believe I give you 6 examples of naval power and its impact on European history. So at this point in time, navies are very important, and also not just getting your navy around Europe, but getting your navy around the world. So having naval bases not just in Europe, but in Africa, in Asia, in the Pacific Islands. National rivalries, okay, so you can see where nationalism is playing a big role here, that our colonies are better than yours, okay? Like when we're scrambling for Africa, basically the amount of land you have in Africa is like basically says how cool of a country you are, except for France, where most of this is worthless desert that nobody else wanted anyway. Scientific racism, which is often confounded, and you know, there's some relationship here, this idea of social Darwinism, this idea that the strong should dominate the weak. You know, which social Darwinism and scientific racism, there are some subtle differences there, but it's not really my, you know, place here to go into the differences. But whether you see scientific racism or social Darwinism, that is a factor there that, hey, we're stronger than they are. You know, there you go. Even though you got to keep in mind at this time there were some social Darwinist critiques against imperialism, because the other side of social Darwinism, let me go ahead and talk about social Darwinism so that you can understand for the test, because social Darwinism might come up. There's a guy named Sir Herbert Spencer, and the idea of social Darwinism exalts competition, says that human beings need to compete in order to thrive, and that competition creates a better society than a society without competition. And so therefore social Darwinists they believe in a laissez-faire economy, because they believe that when government intervenes to protect the weak, then that's just screwing things up. It's based loosely on scientific Darwinism, which it says that, hey, we've gotten where we are because we have outcompeted other species, and the fittest survive. Survival of the fittest is actually something that Spencer came up with and Darwin appropriated. So, you know, the thing is, though, keep in mind that scientific racism can be just as tied with standard Darwinism, because, you know, Darwinism says, like, look, we've all evolved from a common ancestor, and then it's like there's a common human ancestor, and you've got, you know, Native American, white, Asian, black, Hispanic, and all kinds of different races. Well, if they've branched off, well, could one race be the most evolved race? And a lot of these imperialists believed in this idea of scientific racism, where you use this science, you use Darwinian science, and you say, like, look, I mean, not all people are, you know, this whole idea all men are created equal, that is a liberal construct, but, you know, the imperialists didn't necessarily believe that. And so since the Europeans, as you know, Cecil Rhodes said that he believed that the British were the finest stock in the whole world. And since he believed that, the other side of this is, okay, well, you know, we're better than these people. The other part is what's called the civilizing mission. And that is most, you know, most pointed out by Rudyard Kipling's The White Man's Burden. Okay, so that's where he says, take up the white man's burden. He's actually encouraging the Americans to get involved in imperialism. So wars of imperialism, you might need to know something about that. You know, a lot of these have to do with the British. All right, 3 of these are British wars. Another one is the Russians and the Japanese. Okay, so keep in mind that all 3 of these wars are British. And the British, by far, put together the most successful empire. You know, they said at that time the sun never sets on the British Empire. The British Empire covered 1/4 of the globe at one point, all right, because the British were the most successful imperialists. Now, the British, when they went to South Africa, this is the British territory, there were 2 groups of people that the British had to fight. First of all, the Zulu, and this was a local African tribe. There's actually a movie about this called Zulu, which is a classic. We watch it sometimes in my class. Peter Jackson, when he was doing the Battle of Helm's Deep in Lord of the Rings, actually based the Battle of Helm's Deep on Zulu, paying homage to that classic movie. Then you have the Boer Wars, okay, because the Dutch had set up colonies here in South Africa. These people were called Boers or Afrikaners. And these people were there, and the British were fighting against them. Now, that was a very unpopular war because this was white versus white. Okay, this is white European versus white European to see who is going to dominate this area. So the British fight 2 wars distinctly to possess South Africa. And then we have the Opium Wars, and this is where Britain and France fight China, mainly Britain, but they are fighting for control of trade, okay? Now, so what happened here is the Chinese were very, very loath to westernize, okay? They wanted to fight against Western influence. So the Chinese, they are, you know, like, we don't want any of your stuff, any of this stuff you're bringing. If you want to buy goods from us, you can, but you have to pay in silver. You have to pay in precious metals because we don't want anything that's European. So what would happen is that the British would, you know, they would buy stuff from the Chinese, and they'd be like, okay, here's some silver. And then in their colony of India, they would grow opium, and then they would sell that into the Chinese black market. Well, then what happens there? They sell that opium into the Chinese black market. They get that silver back. All right, so the British are just laughing all the way to the bank. And the Chinese are like, hey, no, they want to go to war. But remember that the Chinese are not westernizing. Europeans got where they are because Europeans are willing to borrow from other people. You know, so the Western tradition is when there is some other technology, something exotic, like let's do it. Whereas the Chinese, they were the most advanced people in like 1400, and then by the 19th century, they are not nearly as advanced as the Europeans. So the Chinese try to fight, but what happens here is the Chinese lose, and the British and the French and all the Europeans, they get spheres of influence in China, and the British get Hong Kong. All right, so but that is very important, these spheres of influence, and the Europeans basically just prostitute China throughout you know, this whole area, which you know, leads to a lot of anti-Western resentment. Now, the Russo-Japanese War, hopefully you know, you are intelligent enough to realize that that is Russia versus Japan. Now, Japan, on the other hand, you've got to keep in mind the Chinese, they did not westernize. You know, go all the way back to Peter the Great, okay? Westernizing is the way to make sure that your country continues to stay a country. Whereas Japan, they had resisted westernization as well, but when they see what's happened to China, they're like, come on in here. The United States actually sent a ship over there in the 1850s. Commodore Matthew Perry says, hey, we'd like to talk to you. The Japanese are like, all right, we're listening. We see what's happening to our neighbors, and we're going to westernize because we would like to be a great power. So the Russo-Japanese War, the Japanese and the Russians both have imperialistic ambitions in Asia. So they fight each other, and the Japanese win. Okay, the Japanese defeat. The Japanese are an ascendant power, and the Russians are a declining power. Okay, so while the Japanese are ascendant, the Russians are declining, and the Japanese win. Now, of course, the war started when the Japanese attacked the Russians at Port Arthur without a declaration of war, and the Russians were really surprised, like, what? The Japanese attacked without a declaration of war? OMG. And it's like, well, we didn't know back then. It's kind of what they do. So just keep that in mind. That this is the first victory. The Japanese destroy not one but two Russian fleets. The Japanese constructed a navy. This is another thing I get into on my discussion of naval power in European history. Is the Japanese construct this navy, and it is, you know, the Russians lose, and they go to the United States in order to negotiate peace, the Treaty of Portsmouth, which this is another thing that Teddy Roosevelt is bringing the United States into things. So we're going to see a little more of the United States in the 20th century in this course than we have previously, and then after World War II, the United States is all over the place. All right, so we've got that, and let's talk about the anti-imperialist movement. The anti-imperialist movement, there are two people here, J.A. Hobson and Vladimir Lenin. Yes, that is the same guy responsible for the Bolshevik Revolution. They both criticized imperialist policies of the early 20th century. Now, don't get me wrong here, Hobson was not a communist. He was not a Marxist, but both writers shared a distaste for unregulated capitalism. Okay, that is not to say that they were both communist, but they both had socialist leanings, all right? So unregulated cats, typically Lenin is looking at this. He called imperialism the final stage of capitalism. He believed that capitalism would have to leech off of these countries, and once capitalism had gotten fat like some tick on a dog, that capitalism would finally collapse. But we know that capitalism did not collapse. Now, did capitalism change? Sure it did, but it did not collapse into some sort of big, worldwide communist revolution. Which is why Lenin kind of updates Marx. Marx thought the workers' revolution would happen naturally. Lenin's like, well, actually, it's not going to happen naturally. We've got to sort of make it happen. Decolonization. The world wars were both, both turning points for decolonization. The decolonization process began after World War I, and it culminated with the end of World War II. For example, India received their independence shortly after World War II. All right, and let's see. I think that I've got something else. Let me look real quick. Let's get some water real quick if you need to. I lost my handout that had the Crimean War and all of that kind of stuff on it. Printer's out of paper. Okay, that's what it is that I ordered to print, and then the printer ran out of paper. So I will be. Let's see, that's probably the next thing I'm going to print when the printer ran out of paper. So let me go ahead and grab that. Okay, and that is exactly what happened. Okay, exactly what happened. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about quickly the Crimean War, which, this is becoming more relevant again all of a sudden because Crimea is getting to be in the news again with Russia trying to dominate there. And this is basically same thing keeps happening, that Peter the Great tried to do this, the Russians again in the mid-19th century, and, the Soviets later on. And then now Vladimir Putin trying to, dominate this region. And so the Crimean War, we've got on one side the British and the French and the Ottoman Empire, all right, versus Russia on the other side. And this is a balance of power conflict, okay? So keep in mind that this is all about the balance of power, that Britain and France, that basically the Ottoman Empire, known at that time as the sick man of Europe, that the Ottoman Empire is on its way out, which it'll finally be dismantled after World War I, but they are waning, and the Russians are trying to take advantage of this and go on to the Crimean Peninsula. And so Britain and France side with the Ottoman Empire, and that's a threat to the balance of power and whatnot. So both sides are, suffering a lot of casualties because military technology is changing quite a bit, okay? Now, The Charge of the Light Brigade, is a great poem. This is set in the Crimean War. Basically, what happened with the Light Brigade is cavalry is becoming obsolete very quickly. Okay, now don't tell the Poles. The Poles didn't get that memo when they were going after Hitler's tanks in 1939 with a cavalry charge. But cavalry was, you know, already sort of getting obsolete, or the idea at least of a cavalry charge in battle. What happens is, you know, in this time and even toward World War I, cavalry become more like mobile infantry. They would get off their horses to fight because charging is just stupid when people have repeating rifles and that sort of thing, and cannon. And so, you know, Tennyson's poem, Cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon in front of them, volleyed and thundered. And so, you know, they're attacking this fortified Russian position, and they're charging with horses, but they're being pummeled with cannon fire, and then they've got these guys that are dug in shooting with their repeating rifles. This is stupid, all right? And that is one of the biggest legacies of the Crimean War, is the British realized there are a lot of stupid things that we're doing, okay? So 500,000 deaths later, the Allies defeated Russia, and Britain modernized their military, okay, and command structure. They had, for years, they had sold military commissions, okay, so the practice of selling military commissions. That had been going on for a long time. And so, you know, that's the thing. It's like selling military commissions, like, hey, you know, you want to be, you know, have an officer position in the military, it's going to cost this much, okay? It's about as smart as the sale of indulgences or whatever. But, I mean, you're talking about people that are going to lead men, and we're going to do that based on how much money you have. And so you see that it's going to get less aristocratic because, you know, people are going to be promoted, at least in theory, based on merit rather than based on who their daddy is or how much money they have or something like that, all right? Now, Italian unification is something I'm still kind of trying to wrap my brain around, but keep in mind the late 19th century that both Italy and Germany are united, all right? So very important to note that. And Italian unification, I've just got a bit here in the review guide. I want to do some more research, but some AP European history teachers have thrown this at me, okay, that we've got some important individuals that you may need to know. Mazzini, who is the heart, Cavour, the brains, Garibaldi, the sword, and Victor Emmanuel, the face, which one teacher told me, Victor E. Get it? Ha-ha. All right, so the early Italian unification movement influenced heavily by Romanticism, and also note that Austria, there's an external force here. Now, nationalism is working as an internal force, but also France and Austria and the church, okay? So basically the weakening of France, weakening of Austria, and also the weakened position of the Catholic Church. So, you know, some people compare Cavour and Bismarck. Cavour is kind of like the real politicker there. And one teacher, John Deaver, who's also got a YouTube channel with some stuff on it that I haven't done videos on, while Bismarck used Russia's great power status to give strength to the German unification movement because they could project their own power, Cavour, because Italy's not really a powerful country, used diplomacy to forge alliances between Sardinia and the great powers. So Italy's being unified at this time. Make sure you know that all four of these people are associated with the Italian unification movement, and that should be a good start for you. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the questions and all of that stuff. Okay, I want to see if we've got see what's going on Twitter and see what's going on as far as questions that you are putting forward. All right, looks like we've got about 66 of you here right now. So let's see what it is that that people are saying. All right. Let's see, going to Twitter, at Tom Richey. Blair, thanks for the follow. Let's see, Chitana also followed. What is the best way to study for social condition changes for the test? P.S. Your, Y-O-U-R, a dog? Y-O-U''R-E, Ian. I've got to say that as your teacher, okay? I'm not just trying to be a jerk. Got to say that as your teacher. Now, also, I guess a dog, that's a good thing. I'm guessing that's a compliment. I'm going to take it as a compliment. All right, so, you know, Mr. Moulden will be coming in around 9 to kind of pick some things up. Okay, looks like, thanks, Josh, I may have switched Germany and Portugal. I told y'all that that is the most troublesome part, so I mean I wasn't lying. You know, doing that from scratch, you know, I messed that up, so that is there is a good chance that yes, I did mess that up. So keep that in mind, that Germany and Portugal, they both look very similar, and sometimes they're hard to pick out. But the question that I'd seen before, it didn't have Germany and Portugal both on there, I don't think. But try, look at that map before you take the test. Definitely do. Sounds like I need to look at that map. Yeah, so yeah, I'd totally screwed that up. All right, so Josh actually pulled up Wikipedia and put in the new G's and the new P's and all of that kind of stuff. So keep that in mind. That's so you can see that a little better. That is a map of Africa. All right. So thank you, Josh, for clarifying that. That is awesome that we've gotten that clear. Okay, so yeah, I got a few new Twitter followers. Glad y'all are following along. Let's see what people are saying in the comments here. Let's see where we are. Go over mass politics. That's let's see, Kyle. I don't know if there might be a little bit more specific of a question. I mentioned the Chartist and stuff. Shout out, okay, Miss Harold's class. Good to see y'all. Yeah, I would say, Andrea, that is a pet peeve of mine. People like mixing up anything like lead and lead. People mess that up all the time. Okay, so lead, L-E-A-D says lead if it's a lead pipe. But other than that, if it's not about the metal, L-E-A-D always says lead. So if you lead someone, L-E-D, kind of like the bright lights. Okay, I got some LED lights, like, I blind you, whatever. Okay, so L-E-D is like the light. So, or that's lead. So, yeah, I mean, make sure when you use those things, that's a good thing. All right, so A5IN is saying Mazzini prompted Italian nationalism with the Carbonari Society, which is, a bunch of, like, are they coal workers and stuff, if I'm not mistaken? Garibaldi and with Mazzini tried to establish the Roman Republic in 1849, but failed. Let's see. All right. Compromise with your mom. Okay, so Beatrice may not be with us too much longer. It's a trap! All right, thank you, Sean. Okay, so we got some things about the Italian unification. That's awesome. Why did Western Europe never fully envelop Marxism? Well, there are a number of things, Michaela. First of all, Marxism is a flawed system, okay? There's one guy that I, see at the reading, and call him Dean because he's the dean of his college. I don't even know his name. Couldn't tell you. But Dean says that he's a Marxist looking back, and he's not a Marxist looking forward, because Karl Marx said basically that social class has always been the determinant of everything all through history, all right? It's been determined by social class. And then Marx says, well, one day there's going to be this communist revolution, and then class is no longer going to be an issue, and we're going to have the end of history. So these human beings who have been obsessed with class ever since, they all of a sudden will just throw aside social class and have this revolution. So that's a flawed way of looking at it, that we've done all these things in the past, and we'll do something totally different in the future. Okay, that's counter-historical. So Marx really underestimates human nature in that sort of thing, okay? So, Josh, I will get, we'll get to the Enlightenment probably another time, hopefully. So let's make a timeline. Okay, that sounds kind of cool, Kyle. We might have to do that sometime. We'll see. I mean, I've got some A-push stuff I've got to do too. Let's see. I'm trying to get in here. Every time somebody comments, it's making it quickly. Yes, A5IN, I agree. The Japanese use that same tactic with Pearl Harbor that they did against the Russians. Let's see, Joe, glad to have taught you. He's probably still not here. Okay, so let's see. Hobson, let's see, saw the Boer War as a result of capitalism. A5IN has a lot to add. That's good stuff. Let's see, breaks turn into 2-hour naps. All right, let's see. So backfires not to have breaks. I'm having a break right now. If you take a break while I'm doing Q&A, that's awesome. So yeah, let's see. Yeah, have as many breaks as you want. Just make sure to keep them short. Okay, Christina has mentioned Fabian socialism. Let me go ahead and talk about Fabian socialism. Marxism is all about, trying to go for this, this instant revolution and to bring about socialism by violence and force and do it very quickly. Fabian socialism gets a Fabian socialism gets its name from Fabius Maximus, who was a Roman commander in the Punic Wars. And while Hannibal had destroyed 2 Roman armies, Fabius decides that he's not going to meet Hannibal in open battle, but instead he's going to harass Hannibal here and there. He's going to interrupt his supply lines, and he's going to wait for the right moment. So Fabian tactics are tactics where people are delaying a decisive engagement, and they're giving ground, and they're taking advantage of small opportunities. So the Fabian society, this was from the late 19th century, where socialists decided that, you know what, instead of trying to create this, instant workers' revolution, which isn't going to work, then you have instead this system where we will use the democratic process, and we will bring about socialism by increments, not all at once. So that is the essence of Fabian socialism. Let's use the democratic process, and let's get what we can, and eventually we'll see socialism come about slowly but surely through this democratic process. So that's the whole idea of Fabian socialism. Now, another reason why communism didn't envelop Western Europe is after World War II, you've got the formation of NATO, and you've also got the Marshall Plan, which is a bunch of U.S. dollars coming into the Western European economies. So I hope I got that. Cram AP Euro. This is going to last. You get rid of that new egg, buddy. Let's see. Listen to Nalani. Everybody should listen to Nalani because she's always here. Okay, so retweet Josh's tweet. I tell you what, people, Josh Lasky, who is one of my students, I just retweeted his tweet. I want y'all to follow this guy. Josh has like 2 followers right now. Let's at least triple Josh's followers, okay? Let's kind of get that going, and maybe we can make Josh's followers 10 times, okay? Josh Lasky at Josh_Lasky, Lasky. So I want y'all to in appreciation, follow this guy. Let him know you appreciate him. So I have Andrea retweeted so that you can see that map of Africa. Okay, so we've got a shout out to Mr. Brysowitz in Illinois. Lots of people of Polish ancestry in Illinois. I'm assuming that Mr. Brysowitz is one of those people. All right, so the first and second industrial revolution. The first industrial revolution is in the late 18th century, early 19th century, mostly about textiles, okay? So mostly about textiles and about going from this hand power to machine power. You've got the steam engine and that sort of thing. That's the first industrial revolution. Now, the second industrial revolution is in the late 19th century, and this is what is leading to the new imperialism. The second industrial revolution is about steel, and basically when we study U.S. history and we talk about the Industrial Revolution in U.S. history, that's really that second industrial revolution, massive manufacturing about steel, electricity, chemicals, where, it's really taking things to a whole new level. So in the way that the first industrial revolution brought about this transition from hand power to machine power, the second industrial revolution is, just kind of like the first industrial revolution on crack. So we're dealing with, World War I is a war of the second that's the consequences of the second industrial revolution. So that's really, in essence, the difference between the two, but I don't really have anything formal to give you on that. Okay, so sanitation, pasture, public health. We get requests for social history here and there, and I don't like to ramble about social history, put everybody to sleep. But keep in mind, the late 19th century, you do have, public health. You have advances in medicine, pasture, and dealing with diseases. You've got all these problems like in Manchester, England, and other industrialized cities that are going toward, it's basically we've got this big, dirty, filthy city. Well, in the first half of the 19th century, people complained about it. The second half of the 19th century, people actually did stuff about it, okay? So that's that. And let's see. So Yes, that's it. Okay, seems legit. Okay, so Sean, you like my explanation. I'm glad to see that. Okay, A5IN. I don't know, A5IN, are you following me on Twitter? Do I even know who you are? You know, that's something I should probably look into, because this is one smart person. Like, I see a 5 in the making. Might get this person over to you know, over to teach my class sometime. All right, so let's go ahead and make sure we are at least in touch on Google Plus and all that kind of stuff. Okay, very, very impressed. If you were in my class, I'd give you some extra credit right along with my friend Josh Lasky, who hopefully some more folks are following on Twitter by now. All right, so let's see. We got a lot of stuff here. All right, so what I'm going to do here is go ahead and kind of set things up for Mr. Moulden. Let's see, he's going to be coming in at 9 o'clock. Let's go ahead and talk about, let's see. Let me go ahead and talk about a few other things, because I think Mr. Moulden wanted to talk about German unification. So let's talk about just a few other things. Now, what I've done on my review guide on this segment, I have not really put in something for you to fill in, but really more of a primer for you to read, because there are 3 things that I've seen come up on exams and stuff that you really need to be familiar with. The first of those things, the Paris Commune, okay, which is really something that's kind of in the aftermath of the Franco-Prussian War. France has pretty much been thoroughly embarrassed, all right? France has been thoroughly embarrassed in that war, and there's a bit of an upheaval. And there is this coalition of anti-monarchist people that don't like Napoleon III. And then you've got this coalition that becomes, you know, really more dominated by communists as it keeps going. And so the Paris Commune basically declares itself a new government for France, all right? And the French army is unable to do anything about that for a while, and but the French army does eventually get there, and it's called Bloody Week, where the French army basically went into, like, stormed Paris, and you have a lot of street-to-street fighting, where between 6,000 and 20,000 people were killed in that fighting. So what you need to know about the Paris Commune, there were some communists and other radicals that took over the government of Paris, and then when the French army came in, they killed a whole bunch of people. All right. Then there is the Dreyfus Affair, which went on in France from 1894 to 1906. Albert Dreyfus was a Jewish officer in the French military. Let's see, I think Mr. Moulden is trying to get in. Let me see what I can do here. I need to go ahead and send Mr. Moulden an invitation. I just got a message from him via Twitter. All right, and you can kind of keep reading here. I've got the Dreyfus Affair up, so if you want to keep reading that, then that's awesome. Okay, so let's see what I could do here. I'm going to try to invite him again. All right, so we've got an invitation posted to Mr. Moulden to see if he wants to join us. So the most important thing to note is that Albert Dreyfus was Jewish, all right? So he was a Jewish officer in the French military. And keep in mind the whole idea of the quote-unquote Jewish problem, this had been around for a long time, all right, that this idea of a Jewish problem, of there is something like the Jews had been in Europe ever since, you know, the ancient world, the Middle Ages, but they are not being assimilated into Europe. Okay, let's see. Mr. Moulden is here. Let's see. Listen, turn his volume down. All right. Let's see. Is he there? Oh. Okay, he was there, and looks like, you know, he may come back in a little bit. Let's see. So he broke in for a second. All right, maybe he'll be back. All right, so the thing is, the Jews had been in Europe, and for a long time they weren't really assimilated. And you know, during the Black Death, at the very beginning of this course, like people decided, like, you know, what's responsible for this? And it's like the Jews are responsible for this. And there's this mass hysteria, and you know, a lot of people owed the Jews money because the Jews were the only ones who could lend money at the time. So you know, that's something. You've got this mass hysteria there, and a lot of Jews were killed because of that. You know, for economic reasons and reasons just people that were crazy. And then throughout, you know, early modern European history, you know, you've got Ferdinand and Isabella kick the Jews out of Spain when they take over after the Reconquista. And then there were places where Jews lived in separate neighborhoods or wore distinctive clothing, sometimes by law. Basically what Hitler was doing, except that, you know, Hitler was bringing back things that had already been done. Hitler was not someone who was original. Hitler really just took a collection of different ideas and put them together in this really warped collection, you know, of nonsense. So keep that in mind. So what do we do about this quote-unquote Jewish problem? The Jews have been trying to assimilate, and, you know, Albert Dreyfus is characteristic of this. Here is a guy who's serving in the French military, and you know, he is trying to be a military officer, and then when something is, you know, some stuff is sold to you know, or something, the Germans the Germans seem to have some you know, the Germans seem to have some kind of you know, information provided to them. Well, the knee-jerk reaction of the French military is like, Jew, you know, he did it. And that's, you know, it goes on to Dreyfus, and Dreyfus ends up being court-martialed, and there's this, you know, this sort of sham thing that goes on, and, you know, this sham trial, and he's convicted and sent to Devil's Island in the Caribbean, and then it becomes apparent that there was somebody else who did it. Well, the military gets involved in the cover-up, and this journalist, Emile Zola. So when we're putting this stuff in a box, you need to know that Albert Dreyfus was Jewish. He was in the French military. He was an officer, and he's charged with spying on the Germans. There is a trial. He's sent off to a penal colony. And Emile Zola is this journalist that you know, gets involved here, and he was a writer, and he publishes this open letter to the President of France complaining about the treatment. These, sir, are the facts that explain how this miscarriage of justice came about. Dreyfus is the victim of the lurid imagination of Major Dupaty de Calme, the religious circles surrounding him, and the dirty Jew obsession that is the scourge of our time. Okay, so what happened here is another thing here is the French population was sharply divided. All right, which even today I've discussed with my class how the French population is still very marginalized. Okay, there's a lot of polarization because you've got you know, you've got a larger number of atheists in France than in anywhere else in Europe, maybe besides the Czech Republic, but you've also got a very conservative Catholic element there. Like France just legalized gay marriage within the past year or two because there were like demonstrations all over France against gay marriage. So you know, really you've got over there a lot of things that might remind you more of, you know, the American South and, you know, areas like that that are more socially conservative. So you've got a lot of different political perspectives. So French society was divided between the Dreyfusards and the anti-Dreyfusards. Okay, so these are people who were more liberal, progressive, and then these are more conservative, religious, supporting the military, and lots of public protest and rallies and all that kind of stuff. But finally, Dreyfus is given a retrial, then he's found guilty again, and he gets pardoned. But by 1906, they say, look, we're clearing you of all charges. We're sorry. We understand that, you know, this wasn't right. And Dreyfus was formally cleared, and his commission was given back to him. And, you know, he served in World War I honorably and retired from the military. So on one hand, you could look at this like, hey, Dreyfus came out on top. You know, Dreyfus had to endure a lot of, you know, persecution, but we see that this is an advance for Jews because, you know, they'll things are improving. But then the Dreyfus Affair is also very, this movement was coming around at the same time, but the Dreyfus Affair is very influential on the development of Zionism. There is this idea, keep in mind that nationalism is sweeping through Europe. Now, Zionism is a form of Jewish nationalism. And this is the idea, the Zionist movement, which starts with Theodor Herzl, this guy, Theodor Herzl. If you will it, dude, there is no dream. So started with his publication of Der Judenstaat, however you say that in German, the Jewish state, okay? And his contention was that Jews were not welcome in European society, that even at this time, even in this age of enlightenment, even in this age of liberalism, even in this age of democracy, that there is still anti-Jewish sentiment, okay? There are still people who don't like Jews, and Herzl and people like him believe that the Jews will never really fit in, that the Jews in this era of Italian unification, Italian unification, German unification, that the Jews need their own homeland. Now, whether that's going to be in the Middle East, in their ancestral homeland, or whether this will be like in the Americas, he said maybe Argentina or somewhere. Where it is not as important, is that there is a Jewish state. And this is a movement that gained some steam in Europe, but is not really taken seriously until after World War II. Okay, so keep that in mind, that it is the Holocaust which makes Europe take that seriously, and the Jewish state is established, the Jewish state of Israel is established after World War II. Okay, so keep in mind that you very well could get a question about the Dreyfus Affair and Zionism. All right. So Mr. Moulden has joined us. I told him I wanted to try to get through World War I today. So Mr. Moulden, you want to say hey to everybody real quick?
Hey, we on?
Yeah, we're on, and it looks like basically when I've never done a collaborative hangout before, so what happens is when I'm talking, it'll hear me, and it'll go to my screen, and then when it gets volume from your end, that's why I asked you earlier to turn your sound down, because it was keeping on going back and forth. So when you start talking, it's going to put you on. And so what I plan on doing is I'm going to get to preparing my U.S. history review, and then I'll come back and maybe do a little summing up, perhaps. But Mr. Moulden wanted to talk to y'all about German unification and some of the events leading up to World War I. And what I've got in mind, Mr. Moulden, is probably about 9:45. I'll come back and sum up if you want to do it that way.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Moulden. I'll be back at about 9:45. Now, Mr. Moulden, I don't know if you have any use for this, this review guide that's on my website. They might have they would have access to a copy of this. If you want to do anything with that, that's fine. Or if you want to talk about it, maybe refer to this after you're done. But I've got, kind of a handout, like a review handout on it, and that's in the review guide on my website. But either way, these students are here. They're cramming. We got about 68 right now. So we're just trying to give them the information they need to know for the exam. So y'all keep talking to Mr. Moulden, and I'll be back at 9:45 to look for some questions on Twitter and questions that have been posed. All right, so give Mr. Moulden a warm reception. Woo!
Well, thank you. I'm in awe of Tom's knowledge here. Unlike Tom, I am a student of history. I graduated with a history degree from my small little college in Abilene, Texas. That is where I am at, way out in Texas, while Tom's in South Carolina. But I've never graded the AP test for Euro. I'm a macro AP grader. So I bow to Tom's knowledge for the AP Euro test. But I do teach AP Euro as well. So I'm going to talk to you about German unification, which is why I'm wearing my German soccer jersey here. And what I see German unification of is a role of nationalism. Tom talked a lot about nationalism and the role of nationalism. And the 19th century and its development, and how it became a very dominant force in Western society after 1850. In fact, there was the Germans first tried to nationalize in 1848 with those revolutions. They failed due to all kind of political blunders. And if they had succeeded, imagine the change that would have happened for Germany and all of Europe since in the 20th century. So, but let me try to get a little bit organized here. He talked to you about the Crimean War, and some Italian unification. But my real goal here is to not really talk details with you, because y'all have details. Y'all have been studying details all year. But to kind of point out a big thing in the idea that there is a link between let me get to the same screen you're seeing. There's a link between German unification from all the way from German unification to World War II, and it's nationalism. Nationalism is what started the German unification. It is what eventually tied Germany together and split Germany and Austria apart as well. It was the powder keg, or that spark for the powder keg, that became World War I. And then it was the reunifying force for hit Germany in World War II, and restoring German pride, and then what led to the outbreak of World War II as well, and probably several of Germany's downfalls. So nationalism is your overarching link. So German unification, it starts in 1848, but it fails at that point. And the Italians unified through diplomacy, as Tom pointed out earlier. Germans unified through force. And so the key to this is Otto von Bismarck and his use of force. So let me add that to the screen that you're looking at. So Bismarck and his cry, I can't spell, which is no new news to my students, was for blood and iron. Bismarck came to power when William I was taken throne of Germany, or the northern provinces of Germany. So, following the fall of Napoleon, Austria and Prussia were the two dominant states within the German Confederation that arose after the fall of Napoleon. In 1848, it did appear as if there would be German unification, but as I said earlier, that failed due to the fact that Frederick William did not want to take the role of the throne. He said he didn't want it to be handed to him from the gutter. He was very much a divine right leader. And so from there, it went to, there was no foregone conclusion that we would ever have German unification. There was lots of German states. That was something very, very German of them, was to have these German states. In fact, I have a map here that you can see, or hopefully you can see. Yeah, you can see it. This is Germany right before the Dutch-German-Prussian War. But as you can see, there's German states, and there were even more of these at this time than what you can see here. And so being divided was a German thing. And it was the idea of nationalism that started bringing these German states together. And it was through Bismarck that the northern states came together the most. And all of a sudden I've lost the document. There we go. And so I get back to my notes. So Wilhelm takes the throne of Prussia, William I, in 1861 to And he makes this very important decision. He appoints Bismarck to be his prime minister. Now, Bismarck never really wants the throne of Germany, but he wants the power of the throne of Germany. And so what he does is he uses a gap policy or gap theory in the Constitution of Prussia to take power. And what it had was this gap was that if there was a stalemate between the parliament that and the throne, then it basically said that the king had granted the Constitution. The king could overrule the Constitution. And so Bismarck just basically ignores the liberals to get this done. So we have the gap theory, and he ignores liberals, or what we would call the middle class. And again, I can't spell, so bear with me as I fix that for you. In developing this gap theory. And now, because of this, of his policy, he now has almost complete control of Prussia and the northern states. And in doing this, Bismarck is a Junker or Prussian noble, and he stands before Parliament and delivers his famous blood and iron speech, which is when he says, "Germany is not looking to Prussia's liberalism, but to her power. It is not by speeches and majority resolutions that the great questions of the time will be decided. That was the mistake of 1848 and 1849. It is by iron and blood." So Bismarck sees the way to unite Prussia and ultimately all of Germany is through military buildup and it using its might. And so it's a dramatic shift, but he also plays on the idea that all Germans are superior to those around them and that they should unite because of this. So the key to a modern unified German state was to modernize Prussia through having the latest weapons. And so he starts highly developing and weaponizing Prussia. So the first kind of big political move of this was the Danish-Prussian Wars, or known as the Danish War, or the German-Danish War, or the Daman-Prussian War, in which there was a little bit of a controversy over some lands. So if we go back to this map, you see Denmark up here to the north, and then you have these two German states of Schleswig and Holstein. Technically, they were Prussian territory at the time, and which is all of this yellow. And then you have other German states down here in the south and a few up in the north that aren't part of this unified Prussia. But the King of Denmark declares that these two northern German states are now part of Denmark. Well, you can imagine a guy that says, we are going to decide Prussia's liberalism, not by speeches, but by iron and blood, doesn't take too kindly of a foreign king saying, these two little pieces of land are now mine. So he says no. And in a way of showing German pride, he reaches out to Austria. It's actually a trick. We'll get to that later. And they team up, the ultimate tag team, a tag team of two rivals, to take on a common enemy in Denmark. Now, you can imagine Prussia's been building up military prowess. Austria is known for its military prowess, taking on little old Denmark. Though Denmark did technically start the war by saying those are ours, it doesn't go very well. So Prussia and Austria quickly end the war, and so now you have the controversy of who owns these two pieces of land. Bismarck says that the northern one state, Schleswig, is now part of Prussia, and the southern one, Holstein, will be part of Austria. Now he does this on purpose. He is trying his ultimate goal is to engage Austria in war. Why would Bismarck want to engage Austria in war? So that he can unify all of the German states. His ultimate goal is to have all German people under, well, ultimately his rule, but under a unified German presence. And so by setting up a divide and tension and playing on that nationalism tension, he can eventually poke that sleeping bear until Austria joins the fight. So, and this comes about eventually through the Austro-Prussian War. He does get his way. So I'm not very, I don't have a whole lot of high-tech gadgets like Tom quite yet, but what I do have is a low-tech chart. If I can get it to show back up here. There I am again. All right, so I've made you a low-tech chart, if I can see it. All right, in which I've kind of outlined some of the ideas that lead to eventual German unification, and then those ideals will lead to World War I and World War II. So you have the rise of nationalism in the 19th century, leads to that failed 1848 revolution, which leads to some natural tensions between Austria and Prussia. Then you have the rise of Bismarck and his goal of wanting to spread German power and authority through military, which is, again, sets up a natural tension with Austria. And then you have the Prussian-Danish War, in which now they have to decide who's going to run and control those two countries. And all that leads to the Prussian-Danish, or the Austro-Danish, or Austro-Prussian War. I'll eventually get it out. All right. So from that Austro-Prussian War, or the 7-Week War, as it is known as well, Austria is thought to have the greatest military. Get back up here on me. Sorry. Austria is thought to have the greatest military in Europe at the time. What most of Europe doesn't know is that Bismarck has been very quickly modernizing the Northern German Confederation or Prussian military. And so in 1866, we have the outbreak of the 7 Weeks War. Bismarck kept it a very localized war. What he does is he makes negotiation treaties with France and Italy and Russia for non-interference. He basically says, I'm poking a sleeping bear. This has nothing to do with y'all. This has everything to do with me, but later it has everything to do with y'all. He forgets to mention that. And makes alliances to where they will basically stay out of it. And he does this by promising pieces of land to France and Italy and even Russia as well. So why does it only take 7 weeks? Well, Prussia has the superior military, but they also have the superior transportation, and they use their railroads to quickly move their troops around. So you have the Austro-Prussian War. It was in 1866. Get back to the screen I'm typing on again. All right. It was known as the 7 Weeks War because it lasted 7 weeks. And Prussia uses the ability to quickly mobilize its troops. To defeat Austria rather quickly. Now, Prussia keeping those foreign nations out was also a big key. Another big reason that Prussia wins, Prussia has a new weapon, so Prussia's new war toy at the time was that of the breech-loading long-range rifle, which means they can now fire, reload, and fire again much more quickly than the Austrian army, and they're much more accurate. Though the Mythbusters have proved this to be an inaccurate statement, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. So it just works so well here in Texas. We all like our guns. So Prussia's victory unifies much of Germany without Austria. Bismarck's ultimate goal was to have all of the German states unified after this war. That just doesn't happen. It was a decisive victory for Prussia, but it wasn't an overwhelming one to where Austria had to completely surrender. But what it does do is it does bring all the northern German states together. So the Northern Confederation is established in 1867. It includes all northern German states except for, well, obviously Austria, but it also doesn't include Bohemia. It doesn't include Württemberg or Baden or Saxony as well. So you have basically all of this red is not included. There are the other northern German states, but you have this very strong Prussian kingdom now developed. And what it does is it throws off the balance, or starts to throw off the balance of power in Europe. At this time, your big European controlling countries were thought to be that of Austria, France, and Great Britain, with Russia being the sleeping bear off to the east. But your big countries in imperialism were that of France and Great Britain, with some Dutch and Netherlands getting involved in that as well. Germany was not very big in imperialism up until this time because they were too disjointed. Through Bismarck, they become more and more unified, and so they can start looking out to other countries. What ultimately happens is that these countries start to realize that with they can't grow, there's no more land for them to grow on within Europe, so to gain land, gain resources, they're going to have to go outside of Europe. Now, to fully unify Germany, we have to have the Franco-Prussian War. Where am I? There we go. That took place in 1870 and 1871. Bismarck knows he can't just start attacking and invading France. He would be seen as the aggressor, and that would not play well in the European theater. You can't have the new kid that is trying to assert his strength start picking on the old established crowd. That wouldn't play well for long-term politics. And so what Bismarck sees is he has to figure out a way to get France to attack him. He needs to get the bully, or the cool kid, the jock, to somehow engage him so he can ultimately show the new German power that they are the big kid on the block. And so what he has is the Isms dispatch. So, all right. And I can't spell yet again. Try this again. There we go. The Isms dispatch to provoke war with France and further align unified Germany, and then take back the Alsace-Lorraine, which has always been a key source of German pride. Bismarck basically kicked out a French diplomat out of Germany. So the ruling family of Germany at the time were the, let me look at my pronunciations again here, Hohenzollern. And so a kinsman of the Prussian king was invited to take the role of the king of Spain. France now would be surrounded by the same family ruling both Spain on to its west and Germany, or Prussia, to its east. France wasn't going to let that happen. Bismarck knew that France wouldn't let that happen. And so Bismarck, knowing what's going to happen, in the idea that France is going to say, no, that isn't going to happen, negotiates the taking down of the Prussian kinsmen from Spain. But in doing so, he rewords this dispatch, and it makes it look as though there was a big slight from the French to the Prussians. And in response to that, he kicks out the French ambassador out of Germany, which then provokes France, and France then invades, or declares, leads to declaring war on Prussia, which was Bismarck's ultimate goal, and which was, he also got France to declare the war instead of Bismarck and Prussia declaring war on France. So he got exactly what he wanted out of this. Now, again, the old rule of Europe and the old thought of Europe was that France would have the superior military to that of Prussia, even though Prussia just kicked Austria around the schoolyard pretty good. They, the rest of the gang thought that France could still take Prussia with ease. But that is not what happens. So Napoleon III declares war on Prussia. There's one major decisive battle at Sedan, France. There's lots of battles, but this is the major one. Was in France. Prussia wins with major ease. And so this gives them newfound prestige within all of Germany and all of Europe. And so Bismarck's able to either convince, or the good German way of bribing rulers of other German states to accept the creation of a Germany under Prussian leadership. And so German is, as a result, Germany is unified. On January 18th of 1871 in Versailles, in the Hall of Mirrors, actually, which will later be the same place that they are forced to sign a treaty that will lead to, will end one more war and lead to the other. The creation of the German Empire completely changes the direction of European history. If Austria had won, or France had won either of these two wars, or the original 1848 revolution in Germany had taken place, we probably could have avoided, or at least delayed, one world war, and maybe avoided the second one altogether. But that's up for major historians to debate. But it would have drastically changed the course of history. But as a result of this, we have France and Germany are now bitter enemies, and they will constantly bicker and not trust each other and fight and blame each other from, well, till today. They still don't fully get along. We have a new economic power in Germany, which makes Britain uneasy. Britain had been the major economic power of Europe, relying, well, not on their resources, but on the resources of their colonies. Let's face it, Britain's a small little island, doesn't have a whole lot, but when you take into account that the sun never sets on the British Empire at this time, they have a lot. And due to their mercantilism empire and the shrewd business of using that mercantilism through their imperialism. They are the economic power of Europe. But now Germany is unified, which means that they are going to start playing a major role in building and spreading imperialism throughout of Europe as well. Yeah. And then the third thing this does is also creates, it sends all Europe nations to start looking for overseas for resources, because now they see the fact that Germany is a newfound power and a newfound threat, and so to compete with Germany, this new big player on the block, I mean, these are the same Germanic people that overthrew Rome, and now they're unified. So to overtake and compete with this newfound power, European countries are going to have to start expanding, and they can't do that on their continent. Europe, it's smaller than the United States South geographically, so they're going to have to do this by taking over colonies around the world, and they start quickly leading and bumping into each other. Look at Africa, the map that y'all went over with Tom. And that's only going to get worse when you add in Germany and an expanding France, who is taking some prompting from Germany to expand. So this new Germany, while powerful, isn't fully stable. It was created by military might with Bismarck, and doesn't really, Bismarck, while yes, he is unified Germany, he doesn't have a whole lot of control. In fact, he is forced to retire in 1890. And so there are two big groups that are competing for power within Germany. You have the Catholics and the Socialists. And so both of these enemies Bismarck dealt with while he was still in power, but they ultimately lead to his demise and forcing out. What ultimately does it is that Wilhelm II takes the throne of Germany, and he was losing my notes, went off script here. Well, Bismarck and Wilhelm II had a poor relationship. Bismarck had ruled at the pleasure of the king, William I, and not the people. He had poor relations with Wilhelm II, and with Wilhelm II led to less stable statesmen taking his place, jeopardizing what ultimately would be a non-aggression treaty with France, and would then sacrifice German stability for glory, which always leads to the downfall of Germany, seeking that glory that they have, except for on the soccer field. So, go Germany. So, see if I missed anything looking at my notes here. So, there we are again. So back to my little handy-dandy chart, low-tech chart I have here. So you have all those things that led to the Austro-Prussian War. After the Austro-Prussian War, we talked German Empire being established in 1871. As a result, Austria-Hungary has to be formed. Austria was weakened greatly by the Austro-Prussian War, so much so that the Magyars in Hungary start seeking power within Austria, and they force a treaty with Austria to have a co-alliance between the two, and they had a dual government in which Hungary was allowed to be independent, but still had to report and rule underneath Austria. But they had this dual existing kingdom in which Austria lost a lot of its might. And so Austria goes from being one of the powers of Europe to a nation that is forced to make alliances within nationalist groups within its own country as a result of Prussia wanting to gain its independence. So I hope that made some sense. Let's see what kind of questions I left y'all with, which are probably a bunch, knowing my history. All right, looking at what y'all have on comments on YouTube that y'all are having, talking about FRQs and stuff. Yes, point of view is a big thing. So y'all are good on that. And yes, from looking at FRQs, you have 3. You pick the one you know the best about, and if you don't know about any of them, somebody does a good job of saying, yeah, filler until you can figure out something you know. So apparently somebody likes the spark that likes the powder keg comment. But that's where we are. So after Germany unifies, we now have the stage being set for World War I to break out. World War I is a war that could have been completely avoided if it was not for, well, Europeans. So there's many reasons for why World War I started out. And yes, I know there's other things going on besides German unification at the time. You have the age of mass politics with the rise of socialist parties and increased suffrage, the Third French Republic, and all that. But, well, we're focusing on Germany, and it's this tie of nationalism between German unification in 1871 through World War II. So those are things that we can answer at the end. So why does World War I start out? Well, if you can remember manic, you can remember why World War I starts. Or mania, sorry, not manic, mania. You have militarism, you have alliances, you have nationalism, you have imperialism, and then you have assassination. And so from there is how we get to World War I. You have the buildup of militaries. Germany decides that it needs to increase with its newfound 1871 power. Wilhelm II decides that under Kaiser Wilhelm II, that Germany is going to needs to protect its international trade and growing colonies. And so, like Tom talked about earlier, all countries in Europe that have growing colonies see the need to protect themselves and protect not only their countries within Europe, but all over the world. And so Wilhelm II begins in a massive expansion of the German Navy. Why is that important? Well, after the Franco-Prussian War, Britain kind of concedes that Germany, Prussia, now Germany, is going to have the superior military or army within all of Europe. But they pride themselves on their navy because they have the largest empire. The sun never sets on the British Empire. And so any threat to the British Navy, Britain takes very serious. So when Kaiser Wilhelm II decides to take on a policy of building up its navy to protect its imperialistic, I'm not a loss for words, its imperialistic expansion, Britain doesn't take too kindly of this. And not only are they building up their military, they're building up their military their navy with not just numbers of ships, but new technology in ships. They start building new battleships called thunderheads, which are these new massive battle stations, floating cities. So that is probably one of the worst decisions that the Kaiser and his officers make, was that in 1897 they are going to start building up their fleets. So, and by doing so, they make the British fleet obsolete, and now you have a rivalry between Great Britain and Germany that was very openly hostile. And each side started scrambling to not only build more ships, but better ships. And while the navies didn't really take a large role in World War I, this hostility is very key. So, the World War I, we have M for being militarism, and if I can, militarism. We have the buildup of navies and armies by all sides, under the guise of we have to protect our foreign colonies. So the A is alliances. Like I said earlier, these alliances were very entangled. Bismarck, when he was still controlling the new German Imperial Germany from 1871 to 1890, had formed a dual alliance, a military treaty with the Austro-Hungarians in 1879. In 1887, he had the Reassurance Treaty, which basically said that to Russia, yes, I have an alliance with Austria. Yeah, now we're really big, but we are no threat to you. We are basically unifying to defend ourselves, and that we promise we won't attack you. Bismarck was smart in making sure that this was done, because he did not want, he thought it would be very suicidal for Germany to fight two wars, one on the eastern and one on the western front. It would divide their resources. While they had the largest and the most advanced military, he didn't want to fight two wars at once. So let me go back to the notes I'm typing up here for you. Let me add in a few things here. So militarism, the buildup of navies and armies, ticks off Britain. So alliances, you have the dual alliance, which was Germany and Austro-Hungary. Then you had the Reassurance Treaty with Russia. All right, so we're starting to get close here on time. So let's speed up a little bit. So, unfortunately, once Russia, Wilhelm II took over in 1890, he was, well, a pig-headed man. He pushes Bismarck out of office, as we said earlier. And the Russians begin to view the Germans with increased trepidation. And, well, pretty much because, well, Germany doesn't renew the Reassurance Treaty in 1890. Wilhelm II saw no need to. So let's quickly go over the last of these. We have N, which is nationalism. You have growing nationalism in Germany, but you also have growing nationalism of the Hungarians. And Serbs within Austria. In fact, it's the Serbs and the Black Hand that leads to the assassination, which we'll get to here in a second. So after nationalism was imperialism. Now I can't find where I'm at. growing nations started having conflicts with their overseas empires. They felt the need to have overseas empires because of new German strength. And then, lastly, assassination. Again, spelling not a strong suit of mine, so let me autocorrect that. Thank you, Google. The Black Hand has the assassination of Franz Duke Ferdinand, which sets off a train of events through the alliance system. Germany basically writes a blank check to Austria saying, we'll help you with the Serbs. The Serbs had a treaty with the Russians. The Russians start then building up their military along the Austrian border. Austria and Germany get nervous. They declare war on Russia. Russia had alliances with France and England. France and England therefore declare war on Germany. Germany declares war back on France and England. And war. Now, why was nobody scared of this war? Well, technology. All of Europe thought that this would be a very quick 6-week war at max. In fact, Germany had a plan for a 6-week war. And so when there's no fear of a long war with lots of death and lots of consequences, nobody's going to be afraid of the war. And so nobody sees the long-term effects and thinks long-term. They're all thinking, what can I get out of it now? And so World War I breaks out. I'm sure y'all covered that really well in class. You have, trench warfare on the west. You have open warfare on the east that's moving lots of battles due to the fact that it's just so much land. You can't build trenches along the whole, whole eastern front. And so to end World War I, what ends up happening is that you have the Treaty of Versailles. It ends due to the fact that, you have the Russian Revolution take place in Russia that pulls Russia out. So then Germany pulls all of its resources over to the Western Front. They think they start having some success again, and then the Americans show up, stall the Russian or the German advancement, and then start pushing back as well. And so then Germany had put all of its eggs into one basket. That didn't go well, and so there was no way to stop the Americans and British and French from pushing all the way into Berlin. They sue for war, and we have the Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles destroys German pride by making Germany take the full blame for World War I. So Article 231 of the Treaty of Versailles blames Germany fully for World War I. Germany is also told that they have to pay 138 trillion euros, or at that time francs, to the rest of euros, macro teacher coming up in me, to France and Britain for their damage of World War I. Germany doesn't have the money, and so they just start printing money. Then you have a thing called the Great Depression breakout, and so what you have is Europe in a state of complete mess. As we call it in my class, it is a hot mess. Very mean girls of us. To restore this damaged pride and image, Hitler and the fascists and the Nazis tag onto this idea of nationalism and use Germans' pride and their anger at the Treaty of Versailles to start and gain power. And once Hitler has power, well, the rest is, as they say, history. So that was a lot, really, really quickly. And so as let's kind of start seeing and wrapping up here a little bit. So, yes, A5IN, unrestricted submarine warfare, Zimmermann kilogram were big parts of why World War I, why the Americans got involved in World War I. but again, running short on time. All right, I see somebody asked a question of how did Germany react to being blamed for the war? They reacted well how you would think a country full of pride would react for being completely blamed for all of World War I. Not well. So I see that Tom's starting to get his stuff set up, maybe, or moving things around. So Germany reacted the way that you could imagine they would. They took full blame. They took, or they didn't take full blame, but they were angry at the treaty, and Hitler used that anger to help gain support for the war and for his own political movement within Germany in the build-up of World War II. Somebody's asking how can you get a copy of these notes. I will make them public and post the link on my Twitter, which is at the Mr. Moulden. So yes, Kristen, I will make those notes public and tweet out the link, and I'll tag Tom in them as well so that y'all can see them as well. Looking at other notes, see anything going on.
Testing one. Let's see. All right, Matthew. Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Matthew. I'm ready when you are, so just let me know when you've wrapped.
Oh, I'm ready. I'm answering questions a little bit on Twitter.
Okay, sounds good. And great job with the Twitter promotion there. Yeah, make sure you follow Matthew. That's at the Mr. Moulden. So he's on Twitter, and he might pop in again at some point because I've got a lot of just a lot of things that I'm juggling around with. So let's see. The questions are still coming in. Let me see what's what is established here. Okay, so. All right, we've got lots of stuff here. Communism is flawed. Lots of people arguing about communist. Okay, let's see.
Yeah, I didn't cover communism at all.
Yeah, we haven't really messed with that. Some people. I mean, they've got a lot. Okay, we've got a little glasnost and perestroika and all that kind of stuff. This is pretty cool. All right. So anyway, let's see. Yeah, Matthew. So you've gotten some things tweeted on at you. I haven't really checked Twitter lately. Now I'm thinking about tomorrow getting back together with the audience here. I'm thinking about probably. I don't know how much of our audience is on the West Coast because I don't want to start too early because I don't want to exclude people on the West Coast. So I'm thinking maybe we'll go for a little primetime action tomorrow where we might tie in some other topics because I've still got the Enlightenment and the French Revolution that I haven't talked about. Matthew, are you more of a 20th century guy? I'm kind of getting that vibe, or
no, we just covered it, so I knew that well.
Okay. Cool. Well, yeah, you're welcome to come back and pop in because I always need a break. It's kind of like a senator that's filibustering kind of needs friends to come along. So
I broke that dry after 45 minutes. You've been going for 2 hours.
Yeah, it can be pretty taxing, especially like the next couple of days. I'm going to be doing U.S. history reviews all day for those days. So yeah, let's plan on getting back here for you know, about seven. Let's say 7 o'clock Eastern tomorrow. We'll get back together and we'll do kind of a bit of a hodgepodge. I'll probably throw in some Enlightenment and French Revolution, and then we can talk a little bit about World War II. So that all of that, you know, is there. And keep in mind, in the meantime, look at the lectures that I've posted. I've got the AP Euro review playlist that has about 30 videos. I've got AP Euro Q&A. I've got the Hangouts we've already done. And one of the videos on the AP Euro Q&A is just a summary of all of the stuff that is post-World War II, so that it can guide you in your research and all of that stuff and in your preparation for the exam. And then we might also take some questions about DBQs, FRQs, whatever. The other thing is I want everybody to note is that at 9 a.m. Eastern, I'm going to be, I don't want to encourage anybody to wake up too early, but I will be having a morning of review, okay? So keep that in mind. So your opportunities to review with me are tomorrow evening at 7, and then we've got the morning review, the morning of the exam, and that's going to be 9 o'clock to 11:30 Eastern. Those of you on the West Coast, don't try to get up that early. Just go ahead and watch it, you know, as it's streaming. And you know, if you want to join us later, that's fine. And I may even hang around a little bit for those on the West Coast if they still have questions. So I don't want anybody to feel like you have to get up early to be at this thing, because I'll, you know, be doing it till 11:30. And once I dismiss my students, I may hang around and you know, take some questions from people, you know, in the Mountain Time Zone and in the, you know, and on the West Coast. So anyway, thank you again, Matthew, Mr. Moulden on Twitter, who's joined us tonight, and I will see y'all again around 7 o'clock. So thank y'all for coming, and I'll be back soon. Till next time.